This is your need to know. This is your need to know.
Okay, get ready to dive deep because we're going to be questioning everything this time around.
Sounds intense.
It is. You've really outdone yourself sending in these articles.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Tons of stuff about skepticism, pseudoscience, and
Conspiracy theories?
the whole 9 yards. It seems like you're all really interested in figuring out how to tell real science from the stuff that just kind of pretends to be science.
It's like, well, everyone's got their own truth these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even when
all the signs point in a different direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think we're all susceptible to it, right? I mean, have you ever found yourself clinging to a belief even when like a little voice inside is like, wait, hold on, does this really make sense?
All the time.
Yeah.
It's human nature, I think, to want to believe
Yeah.
and to find those patterns.
Yeah, we're going to tackle some classics this time too, like
Oh, let's hear it.
the memory of water
Ooh, that's a good one.
in homeopathy.
And that persistent moon landing hoax.
Always a favorite. It never goes away.
Never.
So fascinating.
Those are great examples. Those are great examples for really highlighting how even, the smartest folks can fall for these, incredibly compelling narratives.
Right.
We'll dig into the history of some of those beliefs and look at, the psychology that makes them so sticky.
So let's start with definitions, because we've got to be all on the same page here, right?
Right.
When we say skepticism, what are we really talking about?
Sure. So skepticism, at its core, it's about, approaching claims with a healthy dose of curiosity
Okay.
and a demand for evidence.
So not just taking things at face value?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
It's about asking those, tough questions, examining the logic,
Yeah.
and, seeing if the evidence holds up under scrutiny.
So it's like being a detective, right?
Exactly.
Gathering evidence,
Exactly.
piecing together
You got it.
the story.
It's like a puzzle.
And then how about pseudoscience? Because
Right. Well, pseudoscience,
that seems very tricky.
it is tricky. It often dresses itself up in the language of science.
Yeah.
But it lacks that rigorous testing and verification process.
So it's kind of like a magician,
Oh, I like that.
right? Creating illusion and distraction.
Yeah, creating those illusions.
Yeah, you think it's real, but
Smoke and mirrors.
exactly. But a skeptic is more like,
A skeptic is willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads,
right.
even if it means challenging their own preconceived notions.
Now, I remember in one of the articles they talked about something called pseudoskepticism.
Oh, yeah.
And that sounds even trickier.
It is tricky.
Yeah.
Pseudoskeptics, they often appear to be critical thinkers, but they're actually closed off to new ideas
Oh, wow.
that challenge their existing worldview.
Like they've already made up their minds.
Yeah, they've already got it figured out.
And there's nothing
No new information needed.
that can change it.
Right, exactly.
So imagine, for instance, I don't know, maybe like a group of people who are absolutely convinced that all politicians are corrupt,
Sure.
right? So a genuine skeptic would be like, okay, well, let's look at this politician. Let's look at that politician. Let's look at their record. But a pseudo-skeptic would say,
All politicians are bad,
look,
period.
they're all bad. Doesn't matter. I don't need to see the evidence.
Right.
So it's just cherry-picking evidence to support what they already think.
Exactly. Confirmation bias at its finest.
Right. Which I think we all do.
Oh, absolutely.
We're all susceptible to it.
Right. So how do we avoid falling into that trap? Like, how do we sharpen our critical thinking skills?
Well, one of the best tools is the scientific method.
Oh, good old science.
Good old science. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a systematic way of testing claims
Right.
and building knowledge,
Yeah.
based on observation, based on evidence.
Okay.
So let's say, I don't know, if someone claims that they've got this this revolutionary new weight loss pill.
That guarantees you're going to lose like 10 pounds a week without any diet or exercise.
Okay, I'm listening.
Right. Sounds pretty good.
Too good to be true, maybe.
Well, a skeptic, using the scientific method, would want to see those controlled studies, right? They'd want to see, compare the results to a placebo group, understand the mechanisms,
So they're not just going to take the company's word for it.
No, they want to see the data.
Flashy advertising or testimonial.
Exactly. Show me the data.
Give me the evidence.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's one tool. What else?
Well, understanding logical fallacies can also be really helpful.
Logical fallacies. Okay.
So those are flaws in reasoning that can make an argument seem really convincing,
Okay.
even if it's, based on shaky ground.
Right.
Have you ever been in an argument with someone where they, resort to personal attacks?
Oh, all the time, especially online.
Right. Instead of addressing the actual point you're making? That's a classic logical fallacy called ad hominem. It's an attempt to discredit the person making the argument.
Right.
Rather than, actually engaging with the argument itself.
So if we can recognize those fallacies, we can be like, aha, you're not really addressing the argument. You're just attacking me.
Oh, got it.
Got it.
Exactly.
And then what about sources? Because, boy, there are a lot of sources out there.
Sources, yeah, that's huge.
You're like, how do we even know what to trust anymore?
It's tough. You're bombarded with information from all sides, so it's more important than ever to be able to, sort the reliable from the unreliable sources.
So are we talking about, I don't know, you need medical advice? Or are you going to go to, a random blog? Or are you going to go to, a reputable medical institution?
Exactly. Would you trust, I don't know, some random person on the internet for your medical advice?
No.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
You probably want to go to the experts.
And how do we even assess expertise?
Right. Well, it's about, considering their credentials,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, their track record.
So their credibility.
Their credibility, absolutely.
Are they actually an expert in this field?
Are they putting out good information?
Right.
Yeah. And think about bias, too.
Ooh, bias. Now that's a big one.
Bias is a big one.
Because I think we all have biases, whether we're aware of them or not.
Absolutely. We all come to the table with our own set of preconceived notions, right?
Right.
Our own beliefs, our own experiences that shape how we see the world.
And that's where, confirmation bias comes in.
Confirmation bias, yeah, huge one.
We're just looking for the stuff that supports what we already think.
We want to be, right.
Yeah.
So we gravitate towards information that confirms our existing beliefs, and we kind of tend to ignore or downplay evidence that contradicts them.
It's like the saying, we see what we want to see.
Exactly. We see what we want to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got some tools in our toolkit now. We know how to kind of approach things with a skeptical eye, right?
Right.
We're going to use the scientific method.
Mm-hmm.
We can look for logical fallacies.
Mm-hmm.
We can evaluate sources, think about bias.
Absolutely.
So now how do we apply all this in the real world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some real-world examples
Okay.
of pseudoscientific claims and
Wow.
conspiracy theories, and we'll see how these tools can really help us sort the fact from the fiction.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go.
This is your need to know. This is your need to know. This is your need to know. This is your need to know.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork.
Yes.
We've talked about skepticism, we've talked about bias, and we've talked about, how to approach information with that critical eye.
Right.
So now let's dive into some specific examples from all those articles that you sent us.
Yeah, let's get into it.
One that really caught my attention was the story of Jacques Benveniste
Oh, yeah.
and his research on the memory of water.
That's a good one.
It sounds like something out of science fiction.
It really does.
So he was a respected immunologist.
It was, yeah, very well respected.
But this research really stirred things up.
Oh, absolutely. It caused quite a controversy in the scientific community.
Back in the 1980s.
Back in the 80s, yeah.
So what exactly was he claiming?
Well, he was suggesting that water could retain a memory of substances that had been dissolved in it,
Even after they were diluted.
even after being diluted to the point where, there was none of the original substance left.
So he was saying that water could remember things like some kind of, I don't know, liquid hard drive or something.
Yeah, essentially. It's a really wild idea, isn't it?
It's pretty out there.
It is.
So how did the scientific community respond to that?
Well, there's a lot of skepticism. Understandably. I mean, it was pretty extraordinary claim.
Right.
And his research, it was published in the journal Nature.
Oh, wow. So it's a reputable journal?
Very reputable.
Okay.
And they actually sent a team to investigate his lab and try to replicate his findings.
Oh, wow. So they were taking it seriously.
They were taking it seriously. They wanted to see if they could get the same results.
And who was on this team?
Well, the team included James Randi.
Oh, the magician.
Yes, the famous magician and skeptic.
Who is known for debunking all sorts of claims.
Exactly. He was known for debunking paranormal claims and pseudoscience.
So they bring in a magician to investigate.
That's how seriously they were taking this.
So what happened?
Well, they found some problems with Benveniste's methods.
Okay, like what?
Things like lack of proper controls, potential for bias in the experiments, and issues with the way the data was analyzed.
So like not the most rigorous.
Not as rigorous as they would have liked, no.
And when they tried to replicate the results, did they?
No, they couldn't replicate the results under those more controlled conditions.
So the memory of water.
It didn't hold up
Yeah.
under scrutiny.
That's so interesting. So it's like the scientific method, really, with its, emphasis on careful testing, was a key player here in debunking this claim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows how important those principles are. Science is about testing those ideas, and sometimes those tests show that our initial hypotheses were wrong, and that's okay.
Right.
That's how we learn.
That's how we refine our knowledge.
Exactly.
Now, this reminds me of the moon landing.
Oh, yes.
That moon landing hoax. I know people who still believe that, even with all the evidence that says, no, it really happened.
It's a classic example of a conspiracy theory that just won't go away, right? There's tons of evidence that the moon landing was real, but believers will often point to what they see as like inconsistencies or anomalies.
Like what?
Things in photographs or footage.
Oh, like the flag waving?
The flag, yes. The American flag waving in the wind when there's no wind on the moon.
Which, of course, there isn't.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard that one.
That one's, that one's easily explained, though. The flag was mounted on a telescopic pole with a horizontal crossbar to make it stick out. And the ripples in the fabric from being folded up during the journey, they just kind of give the illusion of it waving in the wind.
So it's a simple explanation.
It is.
But it's so easy to see how, if you're looking for evidence of a hoax.
Right, you're going to see what you want to see.
Yeah.
You're going to interpret it that way.
What about the no stars in the photos?
Ah, yes, the missing stars.
People bring that one up a lot.
They do, but that one's also pretty easily explained by, the technicalities of photography.
Okay.
The lunar surface is brightly lit by the sun.
Uh-huh.
And to get a proper exposure of the astronauts and the landscape, the camera settings would have made it impossible to capture the faint light from distant stars.
So it's just a matter of like photographic technique.
Exactly, not a cover-up.
Not a conspiracy.
Correct.
So it seems like for every, piece of evidence that the moon landing hoax believers put forward, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation.
Right.
So why? Why do these conspiracy theories have such staying power?
Well, I think there are a few factors at play. Distrust of authority is a big one.
Yeah.
Some people are just predisposed to believe that governments and institutions are inherently deceitful.
Right, so they're more likely to believe in cover-ups and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the allure of the extraordinary.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, conspiracy theories often offer a much more, how do I put it? A more inciting and dramatic narrative.
Than reality.
Than reality, yes.
Yeah.
Reality can be kind of boring sometimes.
Yeah, who wants to believe that we just, went to the moon, planted a flag, came back, that's it?
Right. Where's the intrigue?
Where's the mystery?
Yeah, it's much more thrilling to think that we're being lied to, that there's this big secret.
I'm in the know.
Exactly. And it can be a very powerful bonding experience.
Yeah, because you feel like you're part of this, exclusive group.
Exactly. Like you're in on something that most people aren't.
Yeah, like you have special knowledge.
Right, exactly.
But of course that knowledge is based on, as we've said, misinformation,
Yeah.
and misinterpretations, and sometimes just flat out lies.
Unfortunately, yes. And once someone falls deep into that rabbit hole, it can be very difficult to bring them back.
It's like, how do you break through that?
It's tough. It's really tough. They become so invested in those beliefs that any evidence to the contrary is just seen as further proof of the conspiracy.
It just reinforces their belief.
It does. It does. It's like they've built this wall around their beliefs and nothing can get through.
So how do we even begin to have these conversations with people?
It's a challenge, but I think the tools we've been talking about are a good starting point.
Okay.
Encourage people to question their sources, to be aware of their own biases,
Mm-hmm.
and to look for evidence that both supports and challenges their beliefs.
So just encourage them to think critically
Exactly.
about all of it.
Absolutely. And I think we also need to foster this culture of open dialogue,
Okay.
where it's okay to disagree respectfully and, to challenge those ideas without resorting to personal attacks.
So easier said than done.
Much easier said than done,
Yeah.
especially these days, It seems like everyone's just so entrenched in their own beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's tough to find that common ground.
So where do we even begin? Like what's a practical first step?
Well, I think it starts with those small steps, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's, having a conversation with a friend or a family member who hold a different viewpoint,
Okay.
and really listening to their perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Just hearing them out.
Hearing them out, yeah.
Right.
Or maybe it's sharing an article that presents a different side of an issue, or, calling out misinformation when you see it online.
So just kind of like gently nudging people.
Yeah, nudging people towards those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And I think promoting media literacy is so important too.
Right, because there's just so much out there.
There's so much out there.
And it's hard to know
What's real, what's not.
Yeah.
What to trust.
So we got to be savvy consumers of information.
Absolutely, we got to be savvy.
Yeah, I like that. So it's about all those things. It's about promoting media literacy, but it's also about creating like a space for respectful dialogue and understanding.
Exactly. We need to approach these conversations with empathy,
No.
and a willingness to learn from each other.
So it's not about like winning the argument.
No, it's not about winning or losing.
It's about understanding.
Yeah, it's about understanding.
Yeah.
And remember, even the most devoted skeptics,
Mhm.
we're human, we're fallible,
We make mistakes.
we make mistakes, we have biases, we have blind spots.
Right.
The key is to, be aware of them
Right.
and to be willing to change our minds when presented with compelling evidence.
That's a great point. Like we can't expect perfection from ourselves or anyone else.
Absolutely not.
It's an ongoing process.
It is.
Right. We're always learning. We're always growing.
Always learning,
Yeah.
always evolving.
Okay, so we've talked about some pretty like heavy stuff here. Debunking those claims, navigating those conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
recognizing our own biases.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack.
But what about just everyday life? Like how can we use these tools to make better decisions in all areas of our lives?
I'm glad you asked that,
Mhm.
because that's where skepticism becomes truly empowering, I think.
Okay.
It's not just about debunking, those grand conspiracies,
Right.
but it's about making more informed choices in all aspects of life,
Like what?
from the products we buy
Okay.
to the information we consume.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you're scrolling through social media.
I do that a lot.
We all do. And you see an ad for, I don't know, this new supplement
Okay.
that claims to, boost your energy levels,
Mm-hmm.
improve your sleep, make you look 10 years younger. Right.
Yeah, all the things.
I've seen those ads.
Right. Well, a skeptic would immediately start asking questions.
Like what?
What's the evidence?
Uh-huh.
Are there any studies to back up these claims?
Right.
Who's behind this company?
Yeah.
What are their credentials?
Are they trying to sell me something?
Right, exactly.
Right.
What are the potential risks or side effects?
And not just taking those testimonials at face value.
No. Testimonials can be very persuasive, but they're not the same as scientific evidence.
So, like, if it sounds too good to be true,
It probably is.
it probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a checklist for those claims. Like,
It
Yeah.
is. You're like, hold on, let me just check this out before I, jump on this bandwagon.
okay.
It's like skepticism helps you to cut through that hype and make those informed choices based on, evidence, not just persuasive language or flashy visuals.
And it's not just for products, right? You can apply those same principles when you're evaluating information from, news sources,
Okay.
politicians.
Politicians. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we need that.
Yeah. That friend who's always sharing those questionable articles on Facebook.
Oh, we all have that friend.
We all do. It's like, hold on a second. Let's take a closer look at this.
So skepticism is like, it's like a life skill. It's like a way of approaching the world.
It is.
With this like open,
An open mind,
yeah, critical.
but critical.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's that balance
Yeah.
that we've been talking about.
So you're curious, you're demanding evidence, you're willing to change your mind,
You got it.
But you're not just accepting everything.
You're not just blindly accepting everything you hear, no.
Yeah, this conversation has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
I feel like I really have this like whole new set of tools.
Yeah, it's empowering, isn't it?
It is.
To be able to think critically
Yeah.
about the world around us.
Yeah. So it's not about being a cynic.
No, not at all.
It's not about being like a naysayer.
No,
It's just about being like a curious, discerning
exactly.
thinker who's always trying to get to the truth, but recognizing we may never have all the answers.
That's a great way to put it.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing that came up in the articles.
Okay.
The psychology of conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, why are they so pervasive? Why do people get sucked in so easily?
That's a fascinating question. It's something that, psychologists, sociologists, they've been trying to figure out for decades.
And what have they found?
Well, they found that these theories, they tap into some deep-seated human needs and anxieties.
Like what?
Well, they offer simple explanations for complex events.
Right, because the world is messy.
The world is messy, it's complicated,
Yeah.
it's unpredictable.
And so these theories, they provide a sense of order and control in a world that can feel very chaotic.
So you're like, okay, this makes sense, this explains it.
Right, exactly.
It's not random, there's a reason for this.
There's a reason, there's a pattern, somebody's in control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're saying that these theories, they make sense of things.
Yeah, they offer a narrative that makes sense of things, even if that narrative is based on, faulty logic or misinformation.
So it's like a story
It is a story.
that we tell ourselves
Yes,
to
exactly.
make sense of
Of the world.
the world.
Yeah, and to feel like we have some control over it.
And they can also like provide a sense of belonging, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about earlier, you're in the know, you have this secret knowledge that most people don't have.
Right, it's like that exclusive club.
Exactly. It's like a secret society.
But of course that knowledge is based on, like we've been saying, all this misinformation.
Unfortunately, yes.
So it's like a false sense of belonging?
Yeah, it is a false sense of belonging,
Yeah.
but it can be very powerful nonetheless.
And once you're in, like we said before, it's really hard to get out.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to break free from those beliefs once they take hold.
So how do we counter that? How do we prevent people from falling into those traps in the first place?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to education.
Okay.
We need to teach people critical thinking skills, media literacy skills, how to evaluate sources, how to identify bias, how to spot those logical fallacies.
So we've got to arm people with the tools.
Exactly. We've got to give them the tools to think for themselves and to navigate this world of information.
Yeah. It's a tough world out there.
It is, especially online, where misinformation spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, so we've got to be vigilant.
We've got to be vigilant.
Right.
We've got to be careful about what we believe and what we share.
Yeah, so much to think about.
Is it?
So we're not just talking about like debunking specific claims, but we're also talking about just like equipping people with the ability to make good decisions.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about empowering people to be critical thinkers, to be discerning consumers of information.
To be skeptics.
Exactly. To be skeptics in the best sense of the word.
Yeah, to be healthy skeptics.
Like healthy skeptics, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about memory of water, we've talked about the moon landing, we've talked about conspiracy theories in general.
Yep.
What's something that our listeners can take away from all of this? Like, what's the big takeaway?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that skepticism is a valuable tool. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
It's not about being cynical or closed-minded.
Right.
It's about approaching the world with curiosity,
Uh-huh.
with a healthy dose of doubt, and a commitment to following the evidence wherever it leads.
So it's about asking questions.
Always asking questions.
Not just accepting things at face value.
Exactly.
Really thinking about things.
Absolutely.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has been. I've really enjoyed this.
Me too, and I think our listeners will too. But before we go, I have one more question for you.
Okay, shoot.
Is there a danger in being too skeptical?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like, can we get so caught up in debunking everything that we miss out on, like genuine discoveries or new ideas?
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't want to be so skeptical that we dismiss every new idea out of hand, you know?
Right, because that's not skepticism, that's just
That's closed-minded.
closed-mindedness, right?
Exactly.
And we talked about pseudoskeptics before.
Right, we don't want to be those guys.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we don't want to just accept everything we hear without question.
Right, that's where critical thinking comes in.
So how do we find that balance?
Well, it's about finding that sweet spot between blind acceptance and blanket dismissal.
That sweet spot.
Yeah, and a good rule of thumb is to remember that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Ooh, Carl Sagan, right?
Carl Sagan. He said it best. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
So if someone's claiming something that, like, overturns everything we know about, I don't know, science or history,
Right.
they better have some really good proof.
They better bring the receipts?
Right. So skepticism is not about being a cynic
No.
or a naysayer.
No, not at all.
It's about being like a curious and discerning thinker
Exactly.
who is always striving for the truth,
Yes.
but recognizing that we might not always get there.
Might not have all the answers.
Yeah, but that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journey is part of the fun.
I like that the journey is part of the fun.
It is.
So we've talked about a lot today, from the memory of water to the moon landing
Yeah.
to conspiracy theories, and
It's been whirlwind.
it has been. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on one more thing.
Okay, what's that?
The role of the media in all of this.
Oh, the media. Yeah, that's a big one.
Because they play a huge role in shaping how we see the world.
Absolutely. They're the gatekeepers of information, right? They decide what we see, what we hear, what we read.
And they can either help or hinder our ability to think critically.
Exactly. They can either amplify those skeptical voices or they can drown them out.
So what are some of the ways that the media can contribute to the spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories?
Well, one way is through something called false balance.
False balance. Okay, tell me more about that.
So false balance is when the media presents fringe theories or pseudoscientific claims as having equal weight to well-established science.
So they're giving like equal airtime to both sides.
Exactly. Even when one side has overwhelming evidence and the other side is just, speculation or conjecture.
Right, so it creates this false impression that there's a genuine debate.
Exactly. It's like saying that the Earth is flat is just as valid a viewpoint as the Earth being round.
Right.
It creates this false equivalency.
Yeah, that's misleading.
It's very misleading, and it can be really harmful because it gives those fringe theories a legitimacy that they don't deserve.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. One example is climate change. You'll often see news programs that give equal time to climate change deniers,
Oh, okay.
as they do to scientists who are, presenting the overwhelming evidence that climate change is real and that it's caused by human activity.
So the viewer is left thinking that there's still this debate going on.
Right, when in reality, the scientific consensus is very clear.
Right, there's no real debate.
Exactly.
But the media is presenting it that way.
Yeah, they're framing it as a debate to, create controversy, to get more viewers, to sell more advertising.
And what about intelligent design?
Oh, that's another good example.
Yeah.
Intelligent design is often presented as a valid scientific alternative to evolution,
When it's not.
when in reality, it's not science at all.
Yeah, it's not science.
It's a religious belief that's been dressed up in scientific language.
Right. So again, it's that false balance.
Yeah.
Giving equal weight to things that are not equal.
Right, and that can be very confusing for the public because they're not always equipped to distinguish between those legitimate scientific claims and those that are not.
So what can we do about that? Like, how do we encourage the media to be more responsible in their reporting?
Well, I think we can start by holding them accountable.
Yeah.
Call them out when they engage in false balance.
Okay.
Write letters to the editor.
Mm-hmm.
Contact those news organizations and let them know that you're not happy with that kind of reporting.
So we have to be active consumers of media.
Absolutely. We can't just passively consume whatever they're feeding us.
Yeah.
We have to be critical. We have to be discerning.
Right. So we have to question the sources.
Yes. Always question those sources.
Think about their biases.
Exactly.
Look for evidence.
Yep.
Don't just accept things at face value.
Don't just take their word for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is, but it's important work because the media has such a powerful influence on our understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that they're using that power responsibly.
So it's not about censoring the media or anything like that.
No, not at all.
It's about encouraging them to be more accurate, more balanced, more fair.
Exactly. It's about holding them to a higher standard.
Yeah, I like that.
Because the stakes are high, when it
Okay.
comes to misinformation and disinformation.
It can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. It can affect people's health, their finances, their relationships, even their political beliefs.
So we can't just sit back and let it happen.
No, we've had to be active participants in this fight against misinformation.
And that starts with being informed consumers of media.
Exactly. We have to educate ourselves, we have to be critical thinkers, and we have to hold the media accountable.
Well said.
Thanks.
Okay, this has been such an amazing conversation.
It really has.
We've talked about skepticism, we've talked about pseudoscience, we've talked about the media, we've talked about conspiracy theories.
It's been a whirlwind.
It has been, but it's been so enlightening, and I think our listeners will really appreciate this.
I hope so.
So before we go, I just want to say, to our listeners out there, keep those questions coming.
Yes. Keep asking questions.
Keep thinking critically.
Absolutely.
And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
That's what skepticism is all about.
Yeah, remember, you're not alone in this.
No. There's a whole community of skeptics out there.
So reach out, connect with each other.
Exactly.
Share your thoughts, share your experiences.
And keep learning.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
And until next time,
Stay curious.
stay skeptical. It's wild how these conspiracy theories, they really weave these intricate narratives and just pull people in.
It's like our brains, I think they're wired to find those patterns, to make sense of things.
Even when they're not there.
Even when they're not there. Exactly.
And when you add in all the emotions like the fear, the distrust, that desire for simple explanations.
Right. It gets really potent,
Yeah.
really compelling.
It reminds me of that experiment where they showed people random dots on a screen and asked them to describe what they saw.
What did they see?
They saw patterns. They saw shapes,
Even though there weren't any.
even though they were totally random.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's our brains crave that order and meaning.
We want to make sense of things.
We do.
We're storytellers by nature. We're always trying to find those narratives.
And those conspiracy theories, they offer that, right?
They do.
That compelling narrative, that way to explain things that seem random or chaotic.
It gives us a sense of control,
Yeah.
in a world that often feels very out of control.
Yeah, but as we've seen, those narratives can be, they can be pretty dangerous.
Oh, they can be very dangerous, leading to misinformation, distrust.
Yeah, it feels I don't know, it feels like it's getting harder and harder to separate fact from fiction these days.
I think you're right.
You know-
With the internet and social media,
Yeah.
information overload.
It's everywhere.
It's hard to know what to trust.
So what do we do? How do we navigate this?
Well, I think the tools we've been talking about, skepticism, critical thinking, media literacy, those are all essential.
Those are our weapons.
Yeah, our weapons against
I
misinformation.
mean, we arm ourselves with those.
We arm ourselves, and I think, encouraging open dialogue is also crucial.
Okay.
Creating spaces where people can respectfully share different perspectives. without resorting to those personal attacks.
And how do we even begin to do that, especially now when it seems like everyone's just so divided?
I know, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But I think it starts with, each of us taking responsibility
Okay.
for the information we consume and share.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, it means, being mindful of the sources we rely on.
Okay.
Checking those facts, considering different perspectives, being willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence.
So basically being those healthy skeptics that we've been talking about.
Exactly. And remembering that, it's okay to disagree,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to do it respectfully
Respectfully.
and with a genuine desire to understand, where the other person is coming from.
This has been such a great conversation.
It really has, yeah.
And I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And I think our listeners have too.
I hope so.
We've really explored some deep topics here today.
We've gone deep.
But I think the main takeaway is that, skepticism is not about being cynical or negative.
No, it's about being curious.
It's about asking questions.
Yeah, it's about being engaged with the world
And thinking critically.
and not being afraid to challenge the status quo.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So to all our listeners out there, keep those questions coming.
keep them coming.
Keep thinking critically.
Don't be afraid to be skeptical.
Don't be afraid to change your mind.
Again, remember, you're not alone.
There's a whole community of us out there.
We're all in this together.
So until next time, stay curious
Stay skeptical.
and keep exploring.
This is your need to know. Whisper like honey. You kiss my skin like sunlight. Our heartbeats sing rhythms. Cherry blossoms dance. Cherry blossoms dance. Fingertips point out constellations. Gentle breezes caress bodies. And I love you. Whoa. Every time and all the time, moonbeams are like soft lips meet. We intertwine gently, breathe and become one. Every time and all the time, hearts beat on and on. Dewdrops, clouds drift by, mountains crumble, my love. Rivers, warm nights, memories, memories, we march on. Every time and all the time, moonbeams are like soft lips meet. We intertwine gently, breathe and become one. Every time and all the time, hearts beat on. Yeah. Gracefully, romantically, eyes into our souls. Heartstrings embrace, harmonies, mellow whispered softly. Love, 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 my love. Raindrops kiss, winds carry whispers, flowers blue, bright love, 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 my love. Every time and all the time, moonbeams are like soft lips meet. We intertwine gently, breathe and become one. Every time and all the time, hearts beat on. Like silk, kiss like nectar, embrace like home, love like oxygen, heartbeats in sync. Every time, always, all the time. Every time and all the time, hearts beat on and on and on and on and on and on. Every time and all the time, life beats on and on and on. every time